Hi, guys. So, Star Trek gets a lot of well deserved props for being inclusive. They were an early show to show us non white characters and roles that you would have expected to be white. And there is some credit for the first visibly interracial kiss. But, I Love Lucy did it first, but since it was a black and white show, and the non white person in the kiss was Puerto Rican, so you couldn't really tell. But it is notable that the I Love Lucy duo of Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz founded Desilu Studios, which made the original Star Trek. So, anyway, as the spin offs developed, starting with The Next Generation in 1987, a sort of casual racism snuck its way in anyway. So, from Riker and his stupid beard to the leading men and women of the shows, Star Trek is racist. Before we go any further, make sure to click like and subscribe. That way you'll get to see more content like this. Also, to help other people find this content. You can also join my Patreon. There'll be links down below. And a reminder at the end of the video. For now, enjoy the rest of the video. Alright, so let's start with the definition of casual racism, because that's what we're talking about here. So casual racism consists of racist thoughts and actions that the person doesn't recognize as racist, doesn't know they're having, doesn't intend to have them, and results in unintentional discrimination against non-white people. There's a casual sexism version of that as well. I'm not talking about the overt racism that the network pushed onto the 60s Star Trek. That was unavoidable. Also, both Gene Roddenberry and Lucille Ball fought hard against all the overt racism and sexism that the network tried to push. I'm also not talking about a couple of episodes notorious for being fraught with racism. We're just not going to go there. And no, Let That Be Their Last Battlefield isn't a complete unconditional exoneration of all future Trek shows. So let's look at the problem, starting with The Next Generation. So we all know season 1 of The Next Generation was crap. We all agree with that. In season 2, there were a lot of changes that led to the show being significantly better, and season 3 is where the show really started to get good, culminating in the best two-parter ever made of any show, The Best of Both Worlds. So now there's a trope called growing the beard that points to when a show that wasn't very good to start started to be good. It's the opposite of jumping the shark. Now, it did exist before season 2 of The Next Generation, but TNG is still often said to have started getting good when Riker grew a beard. In fact, this is parodied in the show itself when Q says he liked Riker better before the beard.
Oh, you're so stolid. You weren't like that before the beard.
So why is this casual racism? Well, let's start with Worf and his promotion. Now, Worf is played by a black man, and his commanding officer got killed back in the first season, so now he's chief of security. As the new chief of security, he has more responsibilities, more appearances, and more character growth throughout season 2. He contributes to the show in a strong, positive way that he just didn't before. And then there's Geordi. Season 1 had a rotating cast of chief engineers, and we don't have any idea why they didn't make a regular engineer. But season 2 needed one, and they had this bridge character who's pretty useless, so they made him chief engineer. Of course, this is the blind black guy who got this promotion. So The Next Generation got better when the white guy grew a beard, and not when the two black guys got promoted, given additional responsibilities, and given many more opportunities to contribute to the story. Right? Now, I'm not calling out the people who made The Next Generation on this one. I'm calling out the fans who decided to focus on the beard. For this next one, which is basically the rest of the video. For this one, the makers of Star Trek had to really work over several different writing and production teams to get the casual racism we're going to talk about. So let's do a quick chronology. Star Trek's original pilot had a white man captaining the ship. Famously, the female first officer had to go for them to be able to move to the second pilot, and this has resulted in a character who previously was only referred to as number 1 getting named stupidly based on that. They could have used this opportunity to honor any number of women in science and engineering, and instead created the name Una. Oops. Alright, so Star Trek's second pilot, the one that was actually shown in the 60s, also had a white man captaining the ship. Star Trek The Next Generation premiered with a white Frenchman played by a British man who immediately surrendered the first time he encountered trouble. Then Deep Space Nine started and gave us the first black man to lead a show. And he was a commander. He got promoted to captain at the end of season 3, but only functioning as a full captain starting in season 4. True, he was captain on screen longer than Kirk was, but by this time there were 6 feature films with Captain Kirk in them. Then Voyager gave us the first female captain, also a white person. Then Enterprise went back to basics with a white man as captain. Then there's a long break, during which time we get a series of reboot films using the original white man character, but simply recast, poorly I thought. And then Star Trek Discovery premiered, and it broke new ground by giving us a Chinese woman as captain with a black first officer, whose literal first act was to betray her captain, get her killed, the ship lost, and a war started. So the first mutineer in Starfleet was Michael Burnham, a black woman. She works hard, and after some time shifting and development, finally becomes captain at the end of season 3. Then Strange New Worlds premieres, with the original white man leading the show simply recast, this time recast very well. Now, I realize he was technically the captain for Season 2 of Discovery. In fact, Season 1 of Discovery gave us another white man who betrayed everybody. Season 2 gave us the original white man who earned himself a spin-off, a feat so far accomplished by only the one character. I don't count Star Trek Picard. Season 3 gave us the lanky alien man, who also just happens to be white. And then we get Star Trek Lower Decks, which finally premieres with the first black woman as captain to ever lead a show. Except that she doesn't lead the show. The show is led by the 4 losers in the Lower Decks, hence the name of the show. So look at this picture. These are all the captains who led their respective shows, starting in the first episode of their respective shows. And you see there are only white people in this picture, because this is what we have. White people can be both captains and show leads. Star Trek prefers men, but are okay with women too. But black people have to earn it on screen. They can be show leads or captains, but not both until they earn it. And once you see this, you can't unsee it. Now, I've been talking about this for years with all sorts of people, and there are some common defenses to this pattern. So let's go over those. All right, if Avery Brooks was fine with it, you should be too. Seriously? If someone says something racist and there's no black person around to be offended, it's still racist. The reverse is true as well. If someone says something racist and the black person who's there isn't offended, it's still racist. Whether or not there are any black people around to get offended by racism isn't what determines whether or not something is racist. And y'all need to quit bringing your one black friend to the discussion when you say racist shit so they can defend you. There should be a support group for one black friend so they can figure out how to stop enabling racist behavior. It is worth pointing out that Avery Brooks has been a champion for civil rights. Star Trek has done nothing but good for social causes, racism included, and you woke libtards need to quit looking for racism where none exists. No, we don't. And this doesn't argue against the fact that the only captains to lead the series have been white, and the black leads have not been captains without earning the rank on screen. That's not an argument against what I've said. Nobody involved with the production was racist, so what they did can't be considered racist. That's why it's called casual racism. It was unintentional. And I'm really getting tired of people saying, I'm not racist, therefore what I said can't be racist. That's the whole point of casual racism, is that you're not racist, but you are saying and doing racist things. But in this case, it was also something that dozens, possibly hundreds of people did. It wasn't done by one person. Now, I'm pretty sure that if Gene Roddenberry had approved of Deep Space Nine, and if he'd been well enough to be involved, he'd have argued that a Star Trek show is led by a captain, so Sisko has to be a captain. Now, I can't prove that, of course. And Michael's arc is the one that's blatantly racist, because the first thing she does is betray her captain.
Stripped of rank, and hereby sentenced to imprisonment for life.
Starfleet isn't racist. We see all sorts of captains, black, Indian, Hispanic, whatever. You're right, Starfleet isn't racist. But Paramount doesn't make shows about Starfleet in general. They make shows about specific captains and crews who are worth making a show about. This isn't about Starfleet, the fictional organization. It's about Star Trek, the very real entertainment franchise. So why does this matter anyway? Alright, so in 2012, reporting for The Atlantic, Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote, "Racism is not merely a simplistic hatred. It is, more often, broad sympathy toward some and broader skepticism toward others. Black America ever lives under that skeptical eye, hence the old admonishments to be twice as good." Then he goes on to quote Cornell Belcher, a pollster for Obama. "The thing is, a black man can't be president in America, given the racial aversion in history that's still out there. However, an extraordinary, gifted, and talented young man who happens to be black can be president." Now, you replace president with captain of the Enterprise, and you can see why Star Trek has to make its black leads earn their captaincies on screen. But wait, isn't Obama old news now? Sure, but the current president rose to political viability as a presidential candidate by questioning whether or not the first black president was a real American. Maybe if we'd had more black captains in Starfleet, that candidacy wouldn't have been viable. And there's more. Science fiction is about people. It's not about the great stories and characters and cool technology. It's influential. President Ronald Reagan famously ordered a change in IT policies and got some laws passed to protect computers after watching war games. Science fiction influences leaders and also inspires people to become leaders. And Star Trek is the single most influential science fiction franchise that has ever existed. So if Star Trek can't get such a little thing right, then how can we ever expect to get it right in real life? So what should they do to fix this? Now, obviously, if Starfleet Academy is going to be led by an admiral, that admiral needs to be black. Otherwise, the very next Star Trek show to be made must have a black captain leading the show from the very first moments of the very first episode. Nothing else will do. It doesn't matter where or when the show is set. It could be a space station or another ship or a colony or whatever. It doesn't matter. The lead character must be both black and at least a captain. Of course, any rank higher than a captain is fine, but they don't tend to make shows about people with those ranks. I really don't think anybody making Star Trek is or was racist at any point. I also can't really say that all of the people involved in all of the decisions that brought us these shows engaged in some type of casual racism. Now, Michael Piller isn't around to respond to this. He passed away in 2005. Rick Berman might be able to, though. Those are the two responsible for creating Deep Space Nine. Now, Ira Steven Behr might respond, but he's the guy who made the decision to promote Sisko, so he tried to fix the situation that he stumbled into. As far as the other shows, I just can't, in good conscience, accuse any individuals involved of being racist. The best I can do is ask everyone who still can to look inside themselves and tell us why this obviously racist pattern emerged in the franchise. Because it's inarguably true that this is a situation with more than a little bit of racism in it. We need to do better, because there are people who aren't even born yet who need to live in that better world.